At the age of 80, one should be enjoying peace, yet many find themselves living in the shadows of silent fears. Have you ever wondered, why do so many people feel more anxious than proud when they turn 80? Imagine sitting quietly by the window one day, watching the last leaf fall from a branch, hearing time whisper to you, "Alone" has become the familiar keyword of your days. You find yourself slipping into an emotional void that's hard to describe. It's not just loneliness. You're also facing physical decline, fading memory, and chronic insomnia. And perhaps the most painful part isn't aging itself, but the feeling that you're no longer part of this world. It may sound heavy, but this isn't a story unique to anyone. In reality, millions of older adults are quietly battling the same fears, and sadly, very few are prepared for them in advance. Today's video will help you identify the 5 most common fears that come with turning 80, from emotional loneliness and physical decline to losing one's rhythm of life and sense of purpose in the family and society. More importantly, you'll learn how to overcome them through simple, practical, daily actions. If you're thinking about your parents or even your own future, take a few minutes to listen. Don't forget to hit share if you believe this is a topic worth spreading. And if you've ever witnessed or experienced something similar, feel free to leave a comment. I truly value every real story. Now let's begin our journey into the 5 greatest fears of turning 80 and discover how no one has to face them alone. Have you ever sat in a crowded room and still felt completely alone? That feeling is not uncommon among older adults. Contrary to the popular belief that loneliness only happens when you're physically alone, the truth is that the deepest kind of loneliness often arises when you're surrounded by people, but no one truly understands you. As people grow older, they are more likely to experience emotional disconnection. Conversations become increasingly superficial, centered on news, weather, or polite small talk. Close friends, those who once shared memories and life's ups and downs, gradually disappear. Children and grandchildren may care deeply, but they are often busy with their own lives, leaving only hurried phone calls or brief weekend visits. Many older adults feel they must pretend to be fine so as not to burden others or to avoid being seen as weak. But that very silence makes them feel even more isolated. They miss the late-night chats with someone who truly listened, the quiet mornings with a freshly brewed cup of coffee made by someone else, the peaceful afternoons sitting together, saying nothing, just being there. The need to feel connected, heard, and understood is not just a psychological desire. It directly affects mental health, memory, and even life expectancy. Emotional loneliness can lead to depression, sleep disorders, and a weakened immune system. When someone feels they don't belong anywhere, they begin to lose their will to live. However, emotional loneliness is not a life sentence. It can change if older adults are encouraged to express their feelings, and if relationships are nurtured with genuine presence rather than just physical proximity. Simple actions, like spending 15 minutes calling an old friend, joining a book club at the library, or writing a handwritten letter to someone, can ease the loneliness inside. More importantly, older adults must know that admitting they feel lonely doesn't make them weak. On the contrary, it is an act of courage and humanity. When someone seeks connection, whether new or rekindled, they are opening the door to joy, to aliveness, to a sense of belonging once again. And sometimes the first step in breaking through loneliness is simply having the courage to say, "I miss having someone to talk to." Up next, we'll explore the second fear, when your body begins to lose the strength you once took for granted. Do you remember the last time you stood up from a chair without needing to push off with your hands, without needing momentum, without wondering, "Will I lose my balance?" For many older adults, actions that once felt effortless now require preparation. And that change slowly shrinks their world, not just physically, but also in terms of their confidence. Most seniors experience physical changes, weakening muscles, slower reflexes, blurred vision, aching joints. These changes happen quietly, gradually, without much fanfare, but they deeply impact daily life. All it takes is one fall, one failed reach for an object, or one episode of breathlessness on the stairs to spark self-doubt. From that moment, people begin to avoid the activities they once enjoyed. Walking in the park, tending to the garden, going out shopping, or meeting with friends. Physical decline doesn't just affect the body, it seeps into our sense of belief. When someone no longer believes they can, they begin to stop trying. And when they stop trying, they close the door to flexibility, independence, and even joy. But here's the important part. Most of this decline doesn't happen overnight. And that means, with the right approach, it can be slowed down or even partially reversed. Some simple but effective strategies include maintaining a daily routine of gentle movement like yoga, walking, or balance exercises, eating a well-rounded diet rich in calcium and protein, getting enough sleep to allow the body to recover, and going for regular health checkups to catch potential problems early. Most importantly, it takes patience and the belief that while age may slow us down, it does not have to stop us. And if it's been a while since you tried doing something simply because you feared your body isn't what it used to be, perhaps today is the time to start again. Slowly, patiently, but with intention. Because sometimes a short walk under the morning sun is enough to remind you. This body, though changing, is still a home worth cherishing. Next, we'll explore the third fear, when a day begins to feel aimless and you no longer know what you're waking up for. Have you ever had a morning when you couldn't find a reason to get out of bed? The clock ticks on as usual, sunlight streams through the window, yet inside you feel empty. Not because of illness, not because of sadness, but simply because you don't know why you woke up. This is one of the most subtle yet frightening feelings of growing old. For many older adults after retirement, once the children have grown and social circles have faded, days that were once busy and purposeful suddenly stretch out endlessly. The roles that once defined them, the caring father, the devoted mother, the hardworking manager, are no longer needed, and they begin to ask themselves, if I'm no longer needed, then who am I? The danger lies in the fact that this loss of purpose is not immediately obvious. It doesn't scream like pain. It doesn't feel urgent like a medical emergency, but it slowly wears down the spirit. One day without direction becomes a week without meaning, then a month of drifting. And eventually people grow used to that feeling, so much so that they forget what it was like to look forward to a new day. But no one is ever truly without purpose. It simply needs to be redefined. If you once lived to raise your children or to build a career, now you can live to nurture yourself, your body, your mind, and your spirit. You can become an inspiration to others, a keeper of family memories, and a trusted friend to someone who just needs to be heard. The solution to feeling lost doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes just rebuilding a rhythm, waking up at the same time every morning, journaling a few lines, tending to your plants, learning something new, is enough to reawaken your sense of life. Try creating a gentle but clear daily routine, a 15-minute morning walk, cooking a favorite dish at noon, listening to music in the afternoon, calling a loved one in the evening. When you have something to look forward to, you have a reason to keep moving forward. Living with purpose doesn't mean achieving something monumental. Sometimes the simplest intentions, like making someone smile or keeping your own mind at peace, are the most beautiful goals in this later chapter of life. And perhaps on the journey to rediscover your rhythm, you'll uncover a new version of yourself, deeper, more at ease, and still full of meaning. Next, we'll gently explore a quiet fear, one that's hard to speak aloud, yet often weighs heavily in the hearts of older adults, the fear of becoming a burden. Have you ever hesitated to ask someone for help with something you used to do easily? Just opening a jar, carrying a bag, or asking, "Could you take me to pick up some medicine?" These seemingly simple things can weigh more heavily on an older person than any physical pain, because attached to them is the quiet fear, I'm becoming a burden. In later life, when the body is no longer as agile, when eyesight fades and memory begins to falter, everyday tasks start to pile up. But instead of speaking up, many choose silence, hiding their struggles to hold on to what they call independence, not wanting to bother others, not wanting to appear weak, not wanting to lose respect. These are the common reasons why this fear exists in such a silent form. Physical decline is natural, but what makes it heavy is not the symptoms. It's how people perceive themselves when they can no longer fully care for themselves. They're not afraid of help. They're afraid of pity. They don't mind using a cane. They mind the awkward glance from a stranger. They don't reject offers of support. They fear that from that moment on, they'll always be seen as someone who needs help. But decline does not mean a loss of dignity. Dignity isn't measured by how much you can do alone. It's in how honestly and calmly you accept your limits. The courage to say, "I could use a little help," is actually a profound expression of self-respect, not weakness. That's why, instead of trying to save face by quietly enduring, older adults can choose a new way of living, one that honors their independence while allowing connection. Accepting the body's changes is a natural part of life's journey, and when we stop resisting reality, we find peace, and paradoxically, earn even more respect from others. Small adjustments can make a big difference. Rearranging the home so essentials are within easy reach, using assistive technology like medical alert devices, and asking family for help before it becomes urgent. And above all, learning to communicate openly, not to complain, but to share and connect. Remember this: no one is truly bothered by helping someone they love. What saddens them is when you feel you don't deserve their help. So be gentle with yourself. Dignity is not lost when you need assistance. It's only lost when you close yourself off, even from those who are ready to walk beside you with full-hearted love. Now we move into the final part, where the world around us begins to shrink, not because the walls have gotten smaller, but because our minds have quietly drawn inward with the passing years. Do you remember the last time you experienced something new? Maybe it was a cafe you'd never visited, a street you hadn't walked before, or simply a melody that unexpectedly made you smile. For older adults, these experiences gradually become rare, not because they've lost interest, but because their world is slowly shrinking. The shrinking world syndrome is a very real condition, yet often overlooked. When health declines, hearing or vision weakens, reflexes slow down, or even when fears arise, fear of falling, of getting lost, of being a bother, older adults begin to avoid going out. They decline invitations, shy away from social activities, and stay within their comfort zone. The familiar house, the familiar chair, the single path to the nearest grocery store. The world itself hasn't changed, but their view of it has. What was once vast and full of possibility becomes a series of carefully calculated journeys. I don't need to go out anymore. I've seen enough. Or, it's too tiring, not worth it. These seemingly harmless phrases often reflect a quieter truth. The spirit is shrinking along with the body. What's concerning is this: as the outer world contracts, so does the inner one. Seniors with limited social engagement tend to be less mentally sharp, less happy, and more vulnerable to conditions like depression and cognitive decline. A lack of stimulation, from small things like sunlight, conversation, or the feeling of novelty, can make life feel eerily silent. But even if circumstances limit physical movement, it doesn't mean older adults have to live in a shrinking world. The key is to create new windows, both literally and metaphorically. Simple ways to expand one's world include joining an online book club, learning to use technology to reconnect with distant friends, caring for a pet, tending a small garden, or exploring creativity through drawing, writing, or music lessons via video. Expanding your world doesn't always mean going outside. Sometimes it means inviting the world in. A cup of tea with a neighbor, a video call with a grandchild, or discovering a new song can reignite curiosity and revive the feeling that I am still alive and still learning. And most importantly, older adults must be encouraged to know that living vibrantly, exploring, and connecting have no expiration date. When the outside world is narrowed by time and circumstance, our inner world must grow wider, filled with joy, presence, and understanding. In the end, remember this: a person's world is not measured by how many miles they've traveled, but by how many moments made them feel truly alive. First of all, thank you for staying with me until the very last moments. In today's busy and chaotic world, Taking time to reflect on aging, on loneliness, on dignity, and on the quiet truths of life is an act of both courage and compassion. Together, we've explored 5 of the most common fears that arise as we approach 80. The ache of emotional loneliness, even when surrounded by others. The slow decline of the body, the fading rhythm and purpose of daily life, the quiet fear of becoming a burden, and finally, the shrinking of one's world. Each of these fears is real and deeply human, but more importantly, each one can be heard, shared, and transformed. I invite you now to pause for just a few seconds and ask yourself, what touched me most? Did you see a loved one in these stories? Or perhaps yourself? What might you want to change in the way you live, or in how you care for the older adults around you? If something here made you reflect, please leave a comment. If you found this message helpful, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes a simple act like that is enough to help someone feel just a little less alone. Let's stay connected, not just in this video, but in the conversations to come. Aging is not the final chapter. It is a new one, a chapter where stillness and depth can become powerful sources of inspiration for younger generations and for those living it now. Allow me to leave you with this gentle reminder. You are never too old to rediscover joy, to begin a new connection, or to live a day that feels truly full. The world is still waiting for you, step by step, slowly but meaningfully.